of the Budget, Finance, and Investment Committee is being conducted electronically pursuant to Governor Bill Lee's Executive Order 16. I would ask for a motion that conducting the meeting electronically is necessary to protect public health, safety, and welfare in light of the coronavirus.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion from Commissioner Gooch and a second, Commissioner Piercy. Any discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. So the next thing on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the June 3rd, 4th, and 16th, 2020 meeting. I'm going to call on our Vice Chairman, Commissioner Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have read those minutes and find everything to be in order, so I'll move for approval, please.
Second.
A motion and a second by Commissioner Johnson. Any discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, next up is a general fund transfer for the Register of Deeds, and we're basically doing a lot of cleanup at the end of the year, similar to what we saw in our last couple of meetings. But Heather, are you here? If not, I guess Lisa, you...
I'll take it. But she's requesting $65 to go into her maintenance agreement account, taking it from her data processing supplies.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Commissioner Allen.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Piercy. Any discussion?
Does she really have to have that much?
I think they don't like going to the end of the year with a negative balance, so they want to transfer that. So yes, I will assume she would.
Yeah, it's to pay one final bill that they had, and that account's already been adjusted by more than $1,000, so the Budget Committee has to approve this one.
Any other questions? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, next is risk management. Ed, I thought I saw him. If you want to come up or...
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, this is an item that in our safety inspections that we have done, we had the right amount in there, but because when we changed from MSI, we changed from them over to Assured Partners, there was a $2,500 fee that came out of this item at the beginning of last year, and it was... For the transfer, they have a 30-day period, so as you're moving files from one to the other, for that 30-day transition period, it was in their contract, but we didn't catch it in last year's budget when we did the budget for this year. So that's what made that fund short, about $2,000. So we're taking it out of board and committee fees and line item 191 and putting it into 399 other contracted services.
Okay, you've heard the request. Do I hear a motion or discussion?
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Johnson makes a motion to approve.
Second, Mr. Dodd.
Commissioner Dodd seconds that motion. Any other discussion? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, and motion carries. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Next up is a general fund budget transfer for the Election Commission, and I guess Lisa's going to cover this one also.
Yes, sir. The Election Commission has got an employee who is retiring, and they also were just over $250 on their commission line. And so we're requesting to move $10,000 from part-time into $5,300 to other salary and wages, $250 to election commission, and $4,450 to election workers.
Okay, you've heard the request. Any further questions for Lisa?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Allen.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Johnson. Any other comments? Mark, call roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Motion carries. Okay, now we have a general fund budget transfer for the Health Department. And I don't know if Dana, are you here or someone?
I'll
Lisa?
do that. This is requesting funds to ensure that there is sufficient money to pay their telephone bills. So we're requesting to move $7,100 into communications out of their repair and maintenance for building.
You've heard the request from her existing budget transfer. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Allen makes a motion to approve.
Second.
Commissioner Piercy seconds. Hearing no further discussion, Mark, call roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen? Yes. Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Motion carries again. Okay, next is a general fund budget transfer and amendment for human resources. Sonia is going to make her way up.
So as we had talked about before with the firefighters, the cancer screenings that we have to conduct by the end of June of this year. Sorry, I'm out of breath. Let me catch my breath. I was running. We thought that we were going to have enough in the budget to cover the 44 firefighters to get their cancer screening, to give the baseline, and we needed a little extra money to make sure we didn't overdraw a line item.
So there was $3,300 available within her own budget. That's moving $2,200 out of the county official and $1,100 out of travel. But to make it the rest, we were requesting to move $700 out of our pooled gas account since we really haven't had to hit that this year.
So most of it was funded within our budget already.
Okay, you've heard the request. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gooch moves.
Second.
Commissioner Piercy seconds. Any other discussion? Mark, call roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you.
Okay, next is our general purpose school fund budget amendments, and Doug is here, so welcome.
I'll combine the two, 141, the general purpose school budget amendments.
That'll be fine unless I hear someone from the committee say otherwise.
Our first, we have two cleanup end-of-year budget amendments for the general purpose school fund. The first one, of course, it's a cleanup budget amendment that increases 2019-2020 revenues by $2,599,257 and uses $649,000 for 2019-2020 expenditures. The largest of the expenditures is the additional laptop computers and online enrollment software, with some of these costs to be reimbursed next fiscal year from CARE Act funds. The additional payroll line item increases are for accrued leave payouts for long-term employees that are retiring at fiscal year end. Recommended motion for the first cleanup amendment is to amend net additional 2019-2020 revenue by $2,599,257, and to increase net expenditures by $649,000 as presented. The second general purpose school fund cleanup or year-end amendment this is a recurring annual amendment. It is for unpaid student meal bad debt charges. In accordance with federal requirements, the Centralized Cafeteria Fund cannot absorb the cost for unpaid student meal debt at fiscal year end. After the receipt of large amounts of donations and a tremendous effort by our individual school bookkeepers and cafeteria managers, the balance for unpaid student meal debt for the 1920 fiscal year has been reduced from $235,242 to a current year-end balance of $156,313. And the recommended motion is to increase budgeted expenditures in the general purpose school fund by $76,400 to cover the overage of unpaid student meal debt over what was originally budgeted this fiscal year for student meal bad debt for the 1920 fiscal year. Funding to come from unassigned fund balance of the general purpose school fund. I'd like to mention something about that real quick. What we're doing with this is over the last 3 fiscal years, and we have discussed with the school board several times to keep them updated on this, and we spoke to the budget committee or the Health and Ed Committee during our annual budget preparation this year about this issue. Our bad debt for unpaid student meals has grown considerably over the last 3 fiscal years. In 17-18, the bad debt write-off that was placed before this commission was $89,322. It increased in 18-19 to $111,528. And of course, what we see today is $156,313. If we had continued with school and without the large donations that we received this year, it would have easily gone to $300,000 of bad meal debt this year. That obviously is unacceptable for us. We have formed an ad hoc committee with principals and cafeteria managers that we have met, and we have some very good recommendations we'll be bringing to the school board this next fiscal year so we can cut this way back down. And what this generates from is we have a policy that at the schools that no child will be without a lunch. You know, if they do not have any money, we're still going to make sure they're fed, because obviously you have a hungry child, they're not going to learn anything. And so what we are going to be bringing the school board to bring down this amount of bad debt this next fiscal year focuses on the parent, not the child. The child's still going to get fed. We're going to make sure we work with the parent to either make sure they get on free and reduced the meal program for their children, or if they don't qualify for free and reduced meal, that the parent knows up front, you know, we need you to provide for your child to make sure they have money to get a lunch. But I wanted to address that before, you know, we went on. But those are the 2 amendments, sir.
Heard the request. Are there any other questions, or do I entertain a motion?
I have a question about that. Where is the leftover balance going to be taken from?
That is from our unassigned fund balance in the general purpose school fund, and that's where it always comes from. It's anything that's over what we budget for bad debt originally with the county commission's approved budget. It has to come from the fund balance of the general purpose school fund, because by federal law we cannot take that bad debt write-off in the cafeteria fund.
Was there money in the ending balance to have taken the whole part out without the donations?
Yes, sir, there was. That's coming out of our unassigned ending fund balance from our general purpose school fund. Yes, sir, there was. And that's why it's going there in this budget amendment.
I'll ask you something you probably won't want to answer, and if you don't want to, that's fine. The donations that were made here, did this come from the bus drivers?
No, sir. No, they came from individuals, and they also came from individuals. Now, if there was a bus driver that happened to be an individual, I don't know. A lot of them also came from several companies that when the local newspaper ran an article about the need of this back at, if you remember, back before Christmas, we had several large companies step forward in Rutherford County and donate funds to go towards this, push this meal debt down.
Thank you. Motion to approve.
Second, with the question. One question. Do you have any, you said you got an ad hoc committee or whatever, do you have any goals set percentage-wise or anything that you're going to try to reduce it to? Or?
Yes, sir. That was right on the very top of that goal, 80,000 or less a year. That's our goal.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second. Commissioner Allen?
I just have one item that I want to add to the discussion that I think Commissioner Johnson might find interesting. Mr. Spurlock mentioned last night that out of our almost 50,000 students, in the data, when they drilled this down, most of this money is generated from the same 600 students. And so that's part of the reason that they're going to be able to target pretty specifically on families. And like I said, just make sure that the ones who are eligible for free and reduced, that they do get signed up for it. And then also just to, like you said, make sure parents are providing for their kids. It's just, but I thought it was interesting. And he said most of this, I think, were middle and high school. So it was just interesting that they already knew that they'd already done that data.
Okay, any further discussion? Commissioner Gooch?
Just a question. Can you remind me, do we do breakfast also, or?
Yes, sir. We provide breakfast for those children. Once again, if they do not have funding.
And that's part of the debt, too?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That is part of it, yes. Now, we do not allow a la carte sales on credit. So if the child does not have money, regardless of their financial status, if they do not have money, they do not get an a la carte. But if they don't have money, regardless, we will give them a full tray of food, just like the child with the money in front of them, because an 8-year-old shouldn't, an 8-year-old shouldn't have to know, he doesn't have money.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, call roll. Mark?
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, and motion carries there. Okay, next, Doug, is the Centralized Cafeteria Fund Budget Amendment.
Yes, sir. That one on item number 3, Fund 143, Centralized Cafeteria, 1920 Budget Amendment. This year in cleanup amendment, adjust expenditure line items to true up non-payroll expenditures, as well as small payroll line item adjustments in case of fiscal year end accrued leave payouts from full-time cafeteria, staff retirements, and terminations. Recommended motion is to approve or to amend the 2019-20 Centralized Cafeteria Fund budget by adjusting expenditures by $179,000 as presented.
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Allen makes a motion to approve. Second, Commissioner Johnson. Any other questions on the cafeteria fund? Mark, call roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, next up is funding for the Laverne Middle School addition. Welcome, Mr. Lee.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Commissioners. On Thursday, May 14th, 2020, Purchasing and Engineering and Construction received bids for the construction of an addition to Laverne Middle School. All bids have been reviewed, and Engineering and Construction recommends Robert S. Biskin's bid at $13,273,640. Adding construction-related contracts at $1.5 million and fixtures, furniture, and equipment of $1.4 million brings the total requested funding of $16,173,640. Recommended motion to approve funding for the Laverne Middle School addition at $16,173,640 from a future bond issue.
We discussed this pretty much at length last night at Health and Ed, and I think we all knew this was coming, so I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve.
Second.
And a second, Commissioner Johnson. Is there any discussion on the Laverne Middle School addition? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, before we move on to the next item, and while we have them here, can we talk about one of the other discussions last night regarding funding for schools? Would that be appropriate?
It's okay with the rest of the committee, and I'm seeing nods, and you guys at home, is this okay? All right.
We discussed last night at Health and Education about the possibility of going ahead and funding the elementary school for Tan Oaks. And if you remember, that was the property that required extensive road improvements, just because of where it was located, and we struggled with that a lot. And so, anyway, Mr. Lee, they accepted bids for this, and the cost to build that school was going to be $49,574,595. That bid, as he explained to us, was $50 a square foot less than John Coleman and $70 a square foot less than Rocky Fork Elementary. And at 145,000 square feet, that is $7.25 million. Last night at Health and Ed, we had a motion. It did not get a second, but after the meeting, there were conversations that were had where one person said they were going to second and didn't. The other one said, I should have seconded and didn't. So that tells me that it could have come out with a 4-3 recommendation last night, which is really the reason that I want to bring it up and talk to you all tonight about it. I'm not asking necessarily for a vote. I'm really laying it at your feet for discussion, because in my bones, I feel like it's a mistake to not take advantage of a really good bid from a really quality builder. But I know you're going to have a lot of questions that I'm not going to be able to answer, and that's why I asked for Doug and Trey to stay for that part of the conversation. So I don't know if there's anything I left out, Trey, you want to add, but I did talk to Mr. Brooks on my way here and was asking him about, the road improvements, that kind of thing, and $7 million could go a long way towards finishing, those roads in that area. We've already, begun with the right-of-way acquisitions, and infrastructures are being put in place. And, he was pretty adamant. He said, we do not need to lose momentum. He said, we need to keep this going, and you can quote me. So anyway, I just want to share that feedback. So please, I would love to hear all of your thoughts. We're the budget committee. We're the numbers people. We're the ones that have to make the numbers work. Lisa had talked to us about it, and she said that it would not create a tax increase for this year, but depending on what the school board brought forward in subsequent years, we could see as much as a 7-cent. It was a ballpark. We were guessing.
Ballpark.
It was a ballpark. We were guessing a 7-cent increase, which might be what, the 21-22 tax year?
Well, what I was saying is the debt for this potentially $100 million, because it's more than just this that we've got on the books to borrow. And round figures, 70,000 per million. So that's the 7 million. We're about a penny per million. So that's what I was saying. The cost of this is about 7 cents.
So I laid the groundwork, but Trey or Doug, if you got anything to add, please.
The one thing I did not say last night, and I felt like I was remiss in not saying, we did not build a new school this year. We built an addition at Rock Springs Elementary. We added 1,100 children. If we do not build this school this year, that's 2 years before it's funded. It's a third year before it's open. And we're going to add 1,100 children per year for 3 years. That's a high school and an elementary or middle, however you want to look at it, that we're going to get that much further behind. And I realize you guys really have a tough job, especially in the climate that we're all in and what we're looking at. And that climate has got us this bid at this price. And I agree with Commissioner Brooks. He and I have worked, I'm just going to say it for the public record, the Highway Department and the school board for years have been at odds. And I commend him and my staff and the other folks here in Murfreesboro, how we have worked together as a collective group to band together to do this. And I agree wholeheartally with him. I would hate for us to lose all that and then come back and need, and it's not going to be $49 million in 2 years. It's going to be, I don't know, pick a number, add 10, 12, 14 million. There's things that we've already paid for and I'll use it as an example. We're required to go to the State Fire Marshal's office for plans review before we go out for bid. That review fee is $57,000. We have 6 months from the time they complete their review to begin construction. And if we don't, then we have to go back and resubmit next year, and it'll be 57 plus. If for some reason y'all don't see this, at a minimum, we've got to get the site work in. I agree with Commissioner Brooks. We just can't lose total momentum, and I don't know how. I'm still new, I'm still learning. I don't know how y'all go about that
And
process.
Trey, there was one other thing you told us last night. Again, you were ballparking that we would need, because we said, what's the or else? What's the worst case scenario if we do not fund this? And some of the solutions were, having classrooms meet in auditoriums or in gymnasiums. You put one class in one corner and one in the other. You have some classes meet in cafeterias before they start serving meals. But the ultimate solution is you buy portables.
Well,
and so they're $104,000 each, and
yes,
we guessed 23.
For a double portable, yes, sir.
Yeah, and we guess
Yes,
we'd
ma'am.
need 23 of those. So again, that's my gut telling me, is that a good investment? Is that a wise investment?
Well, the thing to expound on that, the thing we've been able to do the last few years is work with this committee and all the county commissioners that as we've seen need and been off a year or built 2 schools in 1 year, what we've been able to do is take these 153 portable classrooms that we own. Some of them we've owned for 25 or 30 years, and I'm getting nervous about moving them down the road again. But what we've been able to do, as we open a new school, it relieves overcrowding on 3 to 4 schools. Mr. Spurlock gave you those 4 schools last night, and there's roughly close to 20, there's over 20 portables in that group. And what we do is we move those portables to the other schools that have need, trying to buy us time. We keep moving them around the county. And if we don't build this school, I don't have anything to move, but the county keeps growing. And once you get, we're to the point now at Barfield, once you start adding portables at schools, you have gone in and used up every linen closet, you've used the cafeteria, you've used all these spaces that weren't built as classrooms and turned them into classrooms prior to getting a portable. That's our last ditch effort. We buy the little wood Dutch barns to set outside for the custodians to keep their supplies in because we take their supply closets. So we do that prior to doing portables because the portable is the last ditch effort. And unfortunately, the 4 schools that this school is going to help, they've got anywhere from 3 to 9 portable classrooms at each school. So the only answer for them and the other schools that are requesting help that I can't take those portables to their classroom is more portables, and none of us want more portables. It's Rockville Elementary, Christiana, Barfield, and Buchanan.
Chairman P.,
Mr. Piercy, go ahead.
I watched this meeting on the rerun last night, and everything Miss Allen is quoting is very well true. Now, the full commission has voted on the buying of the property out there. They've voted on letting Mr. Brook help with the road work and all and furnishing part of the money. I'd like to make the motion that this request goes to the full commission on Friday morning and let the full commission decide on this part, on furnishing the money for this school. I don't feel right for us to make the motion and not getting a positive motion from Health and Ed, because we don't want to be taking one committee and stepping on another committee, but we can move it on to the full commission and everybody will be there. They can speak their piece. Mr. Lee can speak his part and go forward with it.
Well, let me get a second on that, and then we'll have some discussion if there is a second. I have a second. All right. Well, let's just discuss exactly what Commissioner Piercy is suggesting.
Mr. Chairman, this is Robert Stevens.
Go ahead.
I have some questions. I'm not sure that I want to send a proposal without some kind of thought or plan attached to it of how we're going to pay for it or how it's going to work once it gets there. But I have some questions for Mr. Lee and also for Ms. Nolan. How many empty rooms are available at other schools that are farther away from the 4 that you just told us about?
All right, can you repeat the question? I didn't hear you, Commissioner.
We wanted to know how many rooms were available.
At other schools?
Yes.
I don't have the list with me tonight, but the elementary schools that are in this area are all anywhere from 90% to 100% full. I'm only aware of maybe 1 or 2 elementary schools that would have possible room. One of those is Brown's Chapel. But you're talking about trying to jump over 4 or 5 different zones that are already peaking full to be able to reach to Brown's Chapel. You'd be rezoning basically half the county, and I'm going off my memory, which sometimes is scary, but there's probably not over 6 to 8 rooms at Brown's Chapel. There's not near enough to take care of what we're talking about.
Okay, and then you also mentioned at least you would need the site prep money for this year, and I was wondering if you could tell us how much that would be.
Roughly $15 million. That money, the site prep money, to clarify, just so everybody's understanding, is included in the 49,707 that we're requesting. That money's included in there, that $15 million.
And this is a good segue to Ms. Nolan, but is it possible for us to attach the $15 million to this bond issue and issue another bond later in the year so we don't have to pay interest on those bonds as long?
Are you saying, are you saying don't borrow all of it?
Correct. Can we borrow part of it now to pay for the site work and such, and then add on the construction part at another bond issue later when the money's needed for that?
I mean, we'll have to, there's a couple things to think about, because sometimes right now, it might be a favorable borrowing situation that it's better to borrow it now if we can achieve lower interest rates. It's unlike a business where you want to match your interest payments to your operations so that your operations will pay this. We're going to be paying this debt out over 20 years. Either we start next year or later. To me, borrowing for government and borrowing for business is kind of a different viewpoint. We're going to be paying it over 20 years. We're not going to get any revenue in from operating a school. I'm going to ask, as y'all deliberate, because we were talking last night, we don't want to double count. So it was in February 2019 that the commission approved $9,155,000, and that was for design and prep, design of the elementary school and site prep. That was our beginning. So when you do this, I would appreciate to kind of wipe the slate clean from this, because we have not borrowed this money that y'all authorized with a bond issue. We've done a capital outlay note to give us some interim financing on this that we will take out when we borrow. So when y'all contemplate, if you would just do the full amount, knowing that we did this and wipe this however our wordsmith wipes this clean, and say that the total project is $51,557,595. That's the whole amount plus design, because the design has increased since 2019. Now, to what one of you said, and I apologize for those that are can't see my documents. so I'll email it. But all I'm showing is the things that y'all have seen before. And the first page is our debt service as it is now. With our, under column 1, total requirements. Our requirement for debt service in 2021 is $53,120,000. We are projecting $1,807,000 to go into fund balance. Assuming a 65% fund balance, we are $12 million above. When you see the next year, that's a $4 million drop from the current requirements. So that's some capacity. I'm just going to do 2 years. If you go to the second page, I add a column for 2021 and say if we borrow it, and I went back to another bond issue that we did, which was about $100 million in 2016, and our first year was around $4 million, so that's kind of what I played with. So if we had $4 million, our excess would be $5,807,000 that we would use fund balance. We are still above our 65%, kind of our target. So that's what I'm saying is we're fine if we could do this, but just know the following year or the year after, it's like what happens next, what comes after these projects. Not this project to cause a tax increase, and this assumes that we are not moving pennies out of debt service. And I remind you that we did move 2 out in the current year. But I think we will be fine next year, but we all know something else is coming, and that something else would be the thing that might create a tax increase for debt service.
I have some other questions, Mr. Chairman.
Continue, Commissioner Stevens, and I have some other folks wanting to jump in too, but go ahead.
So I didn't get to watch the video from last night, but I know there was discussion about the amount that has to be paid to the city of Murfreesboro from these bond issues. How much would that be if we borrowed the full amount for this school, plus what we just borrowed for the Laverne Middle School addition?
Is the question what is the estimate that we would be borrowing on behalf of Murfreesboro?
Correct. What would we have to pay to them out of our bond issue?
Around $9 million.
So that's one of my biggest concerns about this, is that we're going to be borrowing all this money and giving it to the city of Murfreesboro. And I know they have a school system, but from what I understand, they're not planning on building a school this year. So what would they do with the money if they aren't using it for a capital expense like a school? Can they use it for whatever they want to, or do they have to just get parked in an account somewhere until they decide to build something?
They're not constrained like we are, Commissioner. We're constrained to building program. The city of Murfreesboro can use that money in their school system at their discretion. So it doesn't have to be for schools. They can use it for their general purpose fund if they so choose.
Well, that's one of my concerns about moving forward, and I would be interested in seeing if Murfreesboro would forego this money and do it in such a way that in exchange for them not accepting the money, that we take it and put it towards schools that benefit Murfreesboro students with our capital projects. So we can use it to do roof repairs and chillers and maintenance and such at schools where the Murfreesboro students attend, to make those schools better, which will ultimately benefit their taxpayers in the long run. And I would definitely be willing to move forward with this if they would agree to cooperate with us to do that. But I'm just not sure that I want to write a $9 million check to the city right now.
Commissioner, I think this commission did this very same thing in 2008, is to make a formal request of the city of Murfreesboro to forego their share of the bond issue.
And I don't want them to feel like they would get nothing out of the deal, because the funds that they would be getting, I would like for those to go to the maintenance that we're so far behind on, because the budget's limited there. Our maintenance people do a really good job with what they have, but they just don't have enough to keep up with all the buildings we already have. So if Murfreesboro would agree to let us take that $9 million and put it toward school projects that benefit Murfreesboro students, I would be very in favor of this.
Just clarifying, are you saying to use it toward the high schools and middle schools?
Yes, and some of those may not necessarily be in the city limits of Murfreesboro because they may go to a school that's outside the city limits for middle or high school, but if it benefits schools where their students are going, then I think that's a good win for Murfreesboro too, and us, because we can meet our maintenance needs, and it's going to benefit schools that their students attend. So if they would agree to that, I would be very in favor of moving forward with this tonight. And if we could put some kind of condition on the plan that if they agree to forego it, then everything's good to go to the bond market in August. And if they come back and say, no, we don't want to do that, we want the check so we can do whatever we want to with it, then we could reevaluate, in August on whether we want to move forward with the full project or not before the bond issue.
Mr. Lee, go ahead.
Thank you. I think you have a great idea, Commissioner, but here's the dilemma that the school board is in. We're already a month behind because of the COVID and the budget situation and things. I'm looking for Friday for the school, and I don't have to have the funding in place. I've just got to have a thumbs up or a thumbs down from y'all saying the school is a go. Because if I don't write the contractor a contract on Monday morning, I can't meet opening school next year. And I'm not putting I have no intent to put you folks under pressure because we intended on bringing this last month, but with everything that's been going on, we thought it was better to wait and not get it mixed in with budget and everything else because there was so many things going on. But if you vote for it, I'm writing them a contract Monday, and I don't say I'm going to need any money because July they're getting started. Their billing would be fairly low. We've done this in the past. We could pay them and do a transfer later. You follow where I'm going with this. But if we don't, if you tie it to this where you can maybe come back and undo it, I can't, in good faith, write them a contract and them get started and then go back and tell them no. Do you follow what you understand what I'm trying to say?
Well, I do, and that goes back to my first question for Ms. Nolan, which was, can we break this up into two different parts? Because regardless, we're going to need the site work whenever we build the school. If that's soon or if that's 3 years from now, we're going to need that same work. So if we could borrow the money for the site prep and then make the rest of it contingent on Murfreesboro accepting the monies being used for their schools, for the county schools, it benefits their middle and high school students, then we could borrow the rest of the money later on a separate bond issue. I'm just trying to be creative to meet everybody's needs and find a way that we can get this done and not bust our budget.
Mr. Stevens, you got any other comments you want to make at this time?
That's all for now.
All right, Commissioner Johnson.
Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, and I have been wrong a few times, and I'll admit it, but the message that I'm getting from you and from Commissioner Allen, this is the prudent thing to do, to go ahead with the funding for this. And Commissioner Stevens, you got a good idea, but we're in the real world. What is the incentive for the city to come along and agree to any contingency like that? And I think we need to act on this now because quite a few of us were here when we were working on the judicial building over here, and putting it off basically wound up costing about $20 million more because I think the initial bid somewhere was around $50 million, somewhere along that neighborhood. Commissioner P, do you remember that? So the facts of life is that it's not going to get any cheaper, and we've already voted on the funding for the school, and I think we need to act on it now. And even though you got a good idea, Commissioner Stevens, I think we need to go ahead and the prudent thing to do is to include it all in the bond, when we go to the bond market, because of interest rate and everything else. That's my thoughts on it.
Any other, Commissioner Allen?
If I understood Commissioner Piercy's motion correctly, he wanted to advance this without a recommendation from this body. Just simply advance it for discussion only. And I think that's the most respectful way to do it, because I'm the last person who wants to disrespect or dismiss or dishonor Health and Ed last night. As much as I would like for it to come out with a positive recommendation, ideally it would have come from us last night, been here tonight, been on the floor on Friday. This is too important a decision and too expensive a decision and too expensive a mistake if we make it, if it turns out to be one. I would just really like for everybody to have a chance to weigh in on it. So that's the reason that I seconded his motion, because I think that is a respectful way to handle this, to advance it for discussion on Friday, but without a recommendation either way from this body.
Okay. Any other commission or committee members? I've got a couple questions, and I want y'all to get in first. Okay. Hearing nobody else, Lisa, a couple things. And this is not going to happen tonight because with this motion, assuming it carries and no other motions come out, if we voted in this full amount, 49, whatever that number was, how would that change the tax levy we're looking at tonight for this coming year?
It is not.
It will
It's not
not.
going to test it.
Okay.
It's not going to change it.
I've been told that. I just want the committee to hear that and the folks here at home. How will it change the need for a tax increase this coming year, next year? You just covered it, I know, but I just
For the 2021 year,
yes.
we will be amending debt service to pay the debt service on this issue. It's like that second page, and instead of 1.8, it's going to be something, let's say it might be 5 or 6 million that we're going into fund balance, but we have sufficient fund balance in debt service to pay next year's
Okay, so we're
service.
not looking at a tax increase for the coming year. Now, the following year, we don't have a crystal ball, and I'm not going to ask you to go that far either because I know how things come up.
I would say if the school board's not going to ask for anything, that we don't have to borrow for that year.
I don't have that crystal ball either.
Well, my point, and I'm glad you said that, my point is, the reason this didn't come out of, my opinion, the reason this didn't come out of Health and Ed is because there's people that are wary about what our economy is going to do here in the future. And I'm among those people. Now, I'm more optimistic. I would have brought this out of committee last night and brought it to us. We'd be looking at those numbers today. But that's after seeing the sales tax for our county being pretty much level. You know, the sales tax is coming from a different source, but our sales tax is pretty level, and of course our property tax revenue should be pretty level too. Where we've been slapped around is our hotel motel tax. Now, no, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but like I said, you know, I'm the half full glass kind of guy, and I think that we've seen that in this county enough. That's why I feel that way. But at any rate, I tend to agree with you, Commissioner Allen. I think us voting on it tonight, I would rather see it go to the full commission myself. And let's say I've got one more question. Price tag, current revenues, future revenues. What's your crystal ball on future revenues? Are you hearing anything statewide?
Okay, so, and the mayor may chime in on this, you talked about sales tax. One of the things that they did, the legislature, it was the internet sales, if they had $500,000 worth of sales in Tennessee, they were required to collect and remit sales tax. That dropped to 100,000. Is that right? 100,000. The other thing I read that I thought you mentioned hotel motel tax, that just on the document I was reading, if I was reading correctly, that there was a deal struck with, I think Lisa may, with Airbnb and VRBO and some, it seems like there was a third one that for them to collect sales tax and hotel motel tax and remit that to the state, and then the state remit it down. I think that was the two things that I thought were favorable.
And I've seen this too, and like I said, I'm optimistic, and one of the big reasons was too this internet sales tax. If that does pass, and Bill, you may have a comment on that. What do you think will happen with that in the coming session?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it has a very good chance of working in our favor. I think from where it was even 2 years ago, our elected officials in Nashville were reluctant even for the small businesses that sell over the internet. But I think they're beginning to realize that this is another source of income that they really need to tap into, because of, I think, COVID has exposed people buying over the internet to them, and now they know that they're seeing brick and mortar begin to close up in their small rural communities. They don't have any choice but to keep revenue coming in, and if it's through the internet, then they're going to have to yield to that. Of course, when Amazon first came here, the state allowed them, when they first brought their fulfillment center here, they allowed them not to pay internet sales tax, but limited them after 2 years they had to start. So that was good for us. Wilson County, same thing on fulfillment center there, and the one in Chattanooga as well. But I think it's the way of the future. COVID has exposed that. I think we saw that just in the last couple of weeks when everybody got their stimulus check. I mean, just you could see Amazon trucks everywhere. I mean, almost 24 hours a day pulling in people's driveways, so things were being ordered through the internet. I think it's changed our life as we know it today, and it's going to continue, and the legislature won't have any choice but to continue to support more internet sales tax.
Does anybody have any idea if that had went from $500,000 to $100,000, how much more revenue that would have generated for us? Doug?
Mayor Ketchern and I were talking about this, and I spoke with Mike Harrison today, who is the lobbyist for...
Yeah, he sent out for the County Mayors Association, and he sent out the list yesterday. And I think we're up, maybe Rutherford County's up 3.8%, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Sir, it was they put a fiscal impact by lowering the $500,000 to $100,000 on the threshold for the out-of-state that do not have physical presence in the state, but have a nexus, economic nexus.
Right.
It was around $29 million, which is at the local level would be the fiscal impact positive in sales tax, local option. And speaking with Mike Harrison, even though they didn't get the bill, the 1389 bill passed, they placed it under the governor's, the budget appropriation bill. So it's passed and it dropped to the 100,000. So it passed. And like we were talking about,
we'll see the effects of that this next year.
Yes, sir. We will see the effects.
October 1?
Excuse me?
Is that October 1 or is it immediately July 1?
I do not know when it takes effect. Would it be immediate, sir, under the budget?
I think it's July 1.
Because it was under the budget appropriation for the state, that bill. They moved it from the House bill and the Senate bill up to 100,000 to the budget bill for the state budget. So it passed through that. And
maybe it was Hotel Motel that was going to do October 1. One of those was going to be October 1.
That certainly sounds like it would be a boon for our county and the rest of the state when that does take effect. I've taken up enough time on this. Are there any other questions from the committee about Mr. Piercy's motion to move this item to the full commission on the 26th? Is that the right date? This Friday. Commissioner Johnson.
So basically, the motion is to move it on without any contingencies, correct?
Without a recommendation.
Without any recommendation
but we do want
or
it to be voted on. Is that correct, Commissioner Piercy? We want it to be brought
My
before.
intent is to move this to the full commission and let the full commission discuss it, similar to what y'all have just done tonight. I was trying to avoid 2 discussions, but that didn't work. With no recommendation from this committee and no damage going back toward health and ed, by not voting on it, we can move it on to full commission and let the full commission decide. And that is my motion without any recommendation of approving any money for any bonds or anything like that. It's just to move it on for the full commission's recommendation.
Any more discussion? Mark, call roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, so this will be on our agenda Friday. Gentlemen, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mayor?
Mr. Chairman, I found what Mike sent to me yesterday, dealing with May 2019 versus 2020 county allocations, that is by county. Rutherford County last year, May of 19, we received internet sales tax $646,534. This May of 20, we received $895,752. So that was an addition of $249,218, or a 39% increase.
See why I said that about sales tax. Okay. All right, we'll look forward to discussing this and debating it further Friday. Next on the agenda is the Teen Learning Grant Amendment for the Juvenile Court Youth Services. And I assume Lisa's going to do this one.
Yes, sir. This is a grant that we've received for many years. Another term you might hear us call it the Genesis Grant, and you've heard us say it's flow-through money. This adds another year to that contract for $417,696.
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Dodd makes a motion to approve. Second, Commissioner Allen. Any discussion or questions for Lisa? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, next, we actually got 2 discussing Motorola. First is a Motorola upgrade contract change order.
I'll take it.
Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We talked about this in Public Safety the other night. This is a change order in the $16 million Motorola contract that we wrote for upgrading all of our network, going from analog to digital. Inside of that, if you will recall, this change order being reflected tonight it was $126,687 you'll see on your SharePoint, which is the Lynch Hill Tower remediation and the tower site and shelter remediation, and additional scope times 5 sites, $112,066 for the total of $238,753. That dealt with infrastructure, simulcast sites, Smyrna, Long Ridge, Eagleville, Milton, upgrading those sites to prepare them and those towers to handle this Motorola implementation. And pay attention, members, it's very close to the next, what we'll bring up on the next one. This is $238,753. And you'll see on the next one, after approval of this change order, a very close number, so don't get those confused.
Yeah, we did look at this in public safety the other night. One thing I'll mention, this is not new money. There was around $500,000 that was in that.
It was built in for modification.
Right, that was built in there, and this is money that we're pulling out of that. We knew we would have to make some modifications to those towers, to the system. So that's what this request is.
No new money.
No new money. Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Johnson moves.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Gooch. Any other discussion on this money for a changeover order? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Next is, as I said, along the same lines here, this is a Motorola EMS dispatch upgrade proposal. And Lisa or Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, this is what the chairman just talked about. This was built in, knowing the other was looking at the towers. This is going to our dispatch out at South Park. This is putting in new consolettes, networking to connect our CEMS to our countywide trunking systems. It takes care of the electrical work, our grounding requirements, all in this upgrade. And you'll see that it was confusing the other night to some because the numbers were so close. This amount of money is $238,448.06 versus the $238,753. So it was very, very close, but this is, again, no new money of what you're voting on tonight.
And again, I did have the fortune or misfortune of seeing this at Public Safety. Basically, we're having to upgrade our units at our dispatch center now.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Commissioner Johnson.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Allen. Any further discussion or questions? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Next is the TDOT litter contract with the Correctional Work Center, and we got someone coming up now. Welcome. Captain Smitty.
Hello. All we have tonight is the new litter contract for the state highways and the state roads and the interstates. It basically went up about $5,000 because we discovered some miles that were missing. So everything's the same from last year, and they want to continue, so.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Gooch, second Commissioner Piercy. Do we have any questions?
Captain? How close are we on getting that trailer?
It's very close. It's supposed to be done simultaneously with the budget, the new budget, so.
We're just waiting on the money to be appropriated. Okay. That'll be good. And thank you. You guys have really been working since you've taken over the contract. I've noticed the last time I went to Nashville between Waldron and probably Almaville Road, it was looking pretty bad.
Yeah, Officer Gammon stays on top of it.
Yeah, thank you. It's really cleaned up a lot. Thank you. It's hard coming out of a metro area. I don't know what people think since they cross Davidson Line, they go out in Rutherford County. Well, that's why I'm urging Public Works to increase the fines, you know.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next is the general fund budget transfer for the circuit court judges, and I believe Lisa's going to take care of this one for us.
This is requesting to move $1,400 from their travel account to their data processing supplies, and this is to since they're going to be opening up for jury trials, this is to help them to move their counsel tables and lecterns to create more room for their social distancing.
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Gooch
Second.
moves, second, and who was the second? Dodd. Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, general fund budget amendment for unemployment. Again, we'll call on Lisa.
We got the claims and new bill and decided we didn't have enough from the last time we met. So we're asking to move the remaining $905 from the pooled account plus another $7,418 from unassigned fund balance to increase the budgets for county clerk, OIT, circuit court, drug court, sheriff, jail, correctional workhouse, to try to ensure that there is sufficient funds in those lines to pay those projected unemployment claims for the rest of the year.
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Gooch moves. Second, Commissioner Allen. Do I hear any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Next is the general fund budget amendment for liability claims. Yes, Lisa, or is Ed going to do it?
I'm going to do it.
Okay.
Okay, so typically when we adjust revenues, I've already looked at these two funds where we pay casualty property damage lawsuits. That's one fund, and the other one is OJI, Workers' Comp Fund. At the time we were doing the revenue, I didn't have the numbers, but since then do. After looking at both of them and speaking with the school board and finding out how much they're going to be sending into these funds, I'm going to ask to change this amendment. Instead of $800 to judgments, I'm requesting $600,000 and $200,000 to go into workers' comp. Still the same amount coming out of unassigned fund balance of $800,000, but just splitting, again, $600 for judgments, $200 for workers' comp. And all this is to make sure in the workers' comp and this property casualty, we get numbers from our third-party administrators, to set our reserves. And that's what the auditors use to see that we have those claims payable set up on our books, and it requires funding. This year it does. So that's what this is for. It may be that much or it may not.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Commissioner Allen.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Johnson. Are there any other questions about the amendment for the liability claims? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Next is our ambulance service fund amendment for liability claims.
This is the same thing. It's follow-up. It's just the ambulance's share of those claims. $100,000 asking coming out of their assigned for public health.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Dodd for approval.
Second.
Commissioner Johnson seconds that motion. Any other discussion for the ambulance service liability claims? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, next is the solid waste fund budget transfers, and Lisa, I believe, is going to do that one for us.
We've got two. The first one is to make sure that there is sufficient funds in their overtime line and their unemployment line, and there is sufficient funds in the truck driver line, $5,000, to move into those two lines. The second one has to do with, I think this was a request that came through public safety to purchase some software to get out the recycling message. I think Ashley McDonald is one who brought that forward. I think at the time that they were asking for $9,000 or a little more than that. She's got it down to where they'll do the program for 5. So we're requesting to move $3,000 from part-time employees to the instructional supplies and materials. Secondly, we did make sure that through the recycle grant that they were agreeable that they will fund this through the grant.
Okay, you've heard the request there. There is no new money involved in this request.
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Gooch.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Piercy.
I have a question.
Mr. Piercy.
For the mayor. Could this possibly be something that somebody might be going to bid in the future for our trash service that we might not need to spend the money on, or will it go hand in hand with what they're going to do maybe? Do you know?
I think this is just the messaging. There's a part of the grant through this that has to be used for education. And so this is one way that they will fund it, that they can use this tool to get messages out to.
Through schools, through, any other source to educate the general public is what it's going to be used for.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Next is our dead stock removal agreement that we end up seeing once a year. And Lisa, I don't know if you want to read what we've got there.
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gooch. Second, Commissioner Piercy. That's kind of close to yours in my heart. If you've ever had a dead livestock near your place. At any rate, thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen? I'm sorry, Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Motion carries, thank goodness.
Got out of order that time, sorry.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, next up is a budget amendments as necessary, and as far as I know,
I don't think we had any others. This was just kind of a placeholder for items that might have come up after we, last minute today, but I don't think we had any more 1920 amendments, did we, Lisa? No, we can just skip that item.
All right, then item 21, our final review, and I'm going to turn that over to Lisa, and she's got a handout that I think you've got on your desk there.
The changes, I've got some, there's no budgets that I'm requesting to change except the general fund. And one small change for the appropriation of $765 is the dead stock removal. The contract went up $765 from what we had initially budgeted. So that's an increase. We've got 3 grants that flow into next year. Since Reba Carlton, our grant coordinator, has already calculated up to June 30th what would roll, I'm asking you to go ahead and move it so we don't have to amend this into next year. So it's to increase both sides, the revenue, estimated revenue, and the appropriation, all going into account 47,590. One is the law enforcement liaison. It's $11,317. $16,477 for the teen driver safety grant, and then $37,827 for the governor highway safety grant. And so you see that above in the revenue and the bottom. So really the net change to what we're using out of fund balance is $765. But that would bring our revenue, our estimated revenue, to $103,611,135, and appropriations to $113,286,299.
Okay. So we saw that dead stock removal come around pretty quick, didn't we, guys? You ready to move on to the next item, Lisa? Or
Well,
are there any other questions before we do here?
I guess that's the changes that I see that we need to make. I didn't know if there were any other changes. Otherwise, we need to
We're talking about on the tax levy resolution.
Well, did I skip that?
Item 21. This
That's,
is
I
kind of
guess
the
that was,
review of the
that
budget.
was my overview of budgets that changed.
Okay.
All right, so that was my final review.
Do we need a vote on this budget change? Okay. I'll move for approval as presented.
Commissioner Gooch.
Second.
Commissioner Piercy seconds. Any other questions for Lisa on these changes?
Mr. Chairman, this is Robert Stevens. I have a
Robert.
question. If, on Friday, if the commission does not vote to move forward with the Tan Oaks Elementary School, would it be too late then to add a few $1 million to our bond issue for the Laverne Middle School addition that could be used for maintenance projects?
I'm not sure I got the question.
Repeat it, please, Mr. Stevens.
Is it too late to add something?
If, assuming the commission says no to the Tan Oaks Elementary School project, can we, at that point, make a motion to add like several million more dollars to the bond issue to be used for maintenance projects for the school system?
Sure.
I don't want to make the motion to make that change
I don't know that
tonight.
that would be a prudent use of bond money to pay for maintenance projects, though. We typically
Well,
pay
it
that out
would
of Fund 177, which is
But if the
funded by
projects are
property tax.
huge enough, if it's big projects like
Roofs,
HVAC
air
and
conditioning
roofs
things.
and those capital projects that have a life to them more than a year, those are the things that you could add to the bond issue. But I don't think that you can do it then, or you can wait when we come back in August, because in August we'll be coming back to you with probably bond resolutions to decide and firm up what it is that we're going to borrow. If, and I will say this, if that choose not to do the school, I remind you, back in February of 2019, you have already authorized $9 million for this site, to do site work, that we've not borrowed yet, but you've authorized it.
Mr. Stevens, I think the short answer was yes, you can.
Okay, well, I just want that out there, because if the school doesn't pass, then that will be coming, because I want to get ahead on this maintenance while we have an opportunity. But if we decide to build the school, we probably won't be able to add the money in for the big projects.
Okay. Any other discussion here?
While we're on the review, and Mr. Stevens brought up his concerns from earlier back, you had a concern earlier about some equipment for the volunteer fire departments. Did you get that worked out, or do you need to add that, or?
Let me let the mayor address that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the infinite wisdom of the General Assembly, they have allotted funding to each city and to each county. When they sine died last Thursday night, early Friday morning, or Wednesday night, Thursday morning, whichever, our allocation came in larger than originally expected, and they removed by a motion in the Senate that the guidelines are not as restrictive as what they were. So they're leaving it up to each governing body to spend that money appropriately. We are combining the list, and I talked to Chairman P., and I think he had estimated it's going to cost $180,000 for each, for the extraction equipment for each of the 4 volunteer fire departments that we have, and we'll be able to include that in there, and we should receive the funding right after the first of the, into the new fiscal year, after July 1, so we should be able to take care of all 4 of them.
Okay, thank you. I just knew it was a concern of Mr. P's earlier, and we never had discussed any more about it, and I wanted to be sure.
I told him before the meeting that they're on the, I've got them included in that list to provide that extraction equipment for them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Piercy. Any other discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson? Yes. Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner P.
Yes, motion carries. Okay, next up is a tax levy resolution.
I'll kind of go over this by section. It does not change the tax rate at $2.2194. It's still allocated the same way as it is in the 1920 year. Section 2 provides direction on how we allocate business tax to the fund, and it is the same way and allocate that we do the property tax. Section 3 is how we allocate sales tax revenue. Section 4 is how we do wheel tax revenue. Section 5 is how development tax is split between two funds. Section 6 is how the interest earned on idle funds are allocated. Section 7 determines how we allocate delinquent property tax from prior years. Section 8 is new, not new, but we amended it this year. It has to do with the industrial development with those properties at the airport. Section 8 says if there's any conflict, we're repealing them with anything that we've done in the past. This takes effect right after we pass it, right after y'all pass it.
Okay. So you've heard the tax levy resolution. Do I hear any questions or a motion to accept? Commissioner Johnson?
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Second, Commissioner Allen. Is there any discussion, questions? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P.
Yes, motion carries. And finally, our appropriations resolution.
Okay, so the appropriation resolution provides, we'll have to go back and make the changes to what we approved tonight to add that additional appropriation for those grants and then the dead stock removal in the general fund. But I forgot to tell you on the overview, I want to roll back. There were two things that I've changed that didn't come before you, but it did not change the bottom line. One, there was in the trustees' budget, if you remember, there was an amendment that came through, and it was the second year in the row that we had the amendment to move money out of equipment into whatever the line was so that they can look up and find people. So we just went ahead and adjusted that budget for next year so we don't have to do that amendment. It falls in line with kind of what they're doing. The second change, again, it doesn't change that bottom of the function. In the education part of the solid waste budget is that first budget. If you remember Mayor Ketron talking about that the detention correctional work center is taking care of all the litter pickup. But they're going to use one of the positions that we had in there, and they're going to fill it with a detention officer. There wasn't sufficient funds to the position that we had, but there was money in part-time that we just moved money within that budget to make sure that there's enough fund to pay a detention officer instead of, it's like 2 levels up. But again, there was enough money within part-time that we adjusted that budget for that change. So when you see the final product, if you look at your budget and say, well, I don't remember that, that's the only other 2 changes. Again, it doesn't change the bottom lines or the lines of the budgets. So with that said, general fund, we'll make that change to $113,286,299 for those grants and the dead stock removal. The economic development budget, $200,580. Solid waste budget at $5,764,908. Ambulance service budget, $16,493,068. Special purpose fund, $5,000. Drug control fund, $502,000. Highway fund, $10,988,050. General purpose school fund, $421,721,569. Central cafeteria fund, $21,357,266. Education Capital Projects Fund, $7,483,066. Debt Service Fund, $54,280,350.
Okay, you've heard the appropriation resolution. Is there any further discussion or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Johnson moves to approve. Second, Commissioner Piercy. Any other discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say thank you for another budget season almost under our belt here. Mayor, Finance Director, Assistant Director. Well, I say a good job for all of you. Is there any other business to come before us tonight? Hearing none, we are dismissed.
Thank you, Mr.